Welcome, everyone, to the Boiling Point podcast. I know it has been a long time since we've just had a plain old episode, since we've been doing a lot of local school board coverage, but we're back finally with an episode. And we are being joined by Star from Ohio Valley Wrestling. We're going to be calling it OVW through this episode for any non wrestling fans who are watching. JMO, or can I use your full name?
Absolutely.
Jesse Morris, and of course, Mrs. JMO, who is also a wrestling photographer and has her own page. And I'll turn it over to you guys to plug all your stuff in just a moment. But the first thing I want to say is JMO has joined the list of people who are rocking out to Marcus Frederiksen's music during the intro. So congratulations, JMO. Your name is added to a very prestigious list. It's not very long. It's a very small list. So congratulations on that. And of course, Marcus Frederiksen does all of our music. Go check him out, reverbnation.com/Marcus Frederiksen. Listen to your favorite song, share out your favorite, tag us in the post. We'd like to know what your favorite song of his is. And of course, we miss Marcus Frederiksen. He died a few years ago. And of course, check out the Humankind, which is a apparel line that his sister created in his honor. Go pick up something from there. Tell him the Boiling Point podcast sent you. And Marcus and I even though we didn't know each other for very long, have a close attachment because we have the same disease, arthrogryposis, which is a rare disease. And he found me very early as soon as I started the podcast. Like in the first, I think I was barely 10 episodes in when he reached out to the page, found out he was a musician. And I said, hey, I need music. And he said, hey, you can use my music as long as you want, as long as you just make sure you shout me out and give 10 people to my channel. So that's what we continue to do. His music's not going anywhere. We will have it for as long as we exist. JMO and Mrs. JMO, thank you for coming on. You were on the Mayhem Media show, my Mayhemtainment show, our sister show, which is entertainment based. But when we were talking, there was a lot of stuff that you were talking about that I thought went well with some of the stuff that we cover here on the Boiling Point podcast. You also joined another prestigious list, JMO, two of them. That's two tonight for you. Because not only were you rocking out to Marcus Frederiksen's music, but you are now one of the very, very even fewer people who have been on both brands.
Awesome.
So you were getting just honored everywhere tonight.
Appreciate that. Make me feel good before I even get started.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we appreciate when people enjoy the music, and I appreciate when people are willing to come on both shows. The Boiling Point podcast is a different angle, a different side of things, and it is not everybody's cup of tea.
Well, you'll learn fast, and you'll learn more as we go through the stories that we'll tell today. I live every day. I'm grateful for every single day, man. Like, I'm grateful to be alive. I live every moment that way. I live by the motto, make today better than yesterday, and I mean it with every ounce of soul I have in my body. So when I hear good music, I'm going to dance to it.
I appreciate that very much, and I have no doubt that Marcus and his sister Mia both appreciate that as well, and his mom. If his mom has happened to be tuning in, I'm not going to say her name, but shout out Marcus's mom if you tune into this one episode as well. Yes, we wanted to have you on this episode because you had a near-death experience. Now, we're going to get to that in just a little bit here, so stay tuned if you're watching this episode and leave us a comment. We're going to have JMO back for other episodes as well, so we can address any questions or comments you have the next time he's on. But first, I wanted to talk about let's get to know you before we get to this near life and death experience. Okay, so you are a wrestler.
I am.
Ohio Valley Wrestling, OVW. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, OVW was considered, you might not like this term, but it was considered, at least to the general public, the viewers, the minor leagues of the WWE. Wrestlers were sent there to get more seasoning, more training. It was the 90s version of what NXT has now become.
That is correct. We were the developmental talent. We were the developmental territory for Ohio Valley, for WWF at that time, WWE. Yes, sir.
Yeah, they were WWF before they were WWE. Yes, for anybody who's young enough and they're like, "What's WWF?" That's what they were called before the WWE.
Absolutely. And everybody you can possibly think of that as a wrestler today, they've all came through Ohio Valley Wrestling. John Cena, Randy Orton, Cody Rhodes, Batista. The list goes on and on. Sean Spears. The list goes on and on. The guys who trained, Mickey James. Pretty much anyone you could think of has been through OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling, and they earned their stripes right here in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah. Now you guys, OVW they're not the developmental talent anymore for WWE. They are their own organization, and they're still a high end indie promotion.
We are. We actually have the Ohio Valley Academy, and we're state certified. We're a state certified school. You can actually get grants from the state of Kentucky to come to Ohio Valley Wrestling to become a wrestler. We are
Okay.
state certified.
Excellent. Well,
We're
I
an
know
actual trade school.
excellent. I know we have a couple of viewers in Kentucky, so there you go. If anybody in Kentucky wants to go there, that's excellent. It's great. I'm glad that they honestly, after when NXT came, when WWE went public and they started their own NXT brand, I did not think OVW was going to last. I thought for sure the attachment with the WWE was what kept them at the place that they were, but they have
Only
continued.
one left. There were several promotions that were in works with WWE, WWF, and they were considered development territories, considered places for the workers to go to, and we're the only one left. We're the only one standing. Of course, Ohio Valley was created by Nightmare Danny Davis. I'm sure some of the old school listeners on here know exactly who Nightmare Danny Davis is. But he was a wrestler, with Jerry Lawler and all the greats, Bill Dundee. So yeah, Danny Davis owned Ohio Valley Wrestling, and then about 6 years ago now, I think, somewhere around there, Al Snow, WWF original Al Snow, bought OVW and currently still owns OVW, and that's who I work directly for is Al Snow. I'm an agent at OVW, which means just fancy word for saying I get to show them and get told what to do, just like everybody else. So we help write the show, we help produce the show, we help put it on television. We're all the people you don't get to see, on television, but without us, the show wouldn't work. So
Absolutely. And I just do a very small podcast here, and I can tell you the production that I have to do myself is insane. So as soon as we can hire somebody to do it, that's the first thing I'm handing off.
the amount of work that goes into putting on a weekly television show is unbelievable. We touched on that topic when we were on your show, your other podcast, I should say.
Yeah, man, yep.
Yeah, the amount of sacrifice and the time that goes in that people just wouldn't even believe. I mean, we have a booking meeting at 11 o'clock on Sunday nights. That's when my week starts for Thursday night television. So it's a never ending, a constant pull of different directions and cycle. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. We're shooting this on a Sunday night. We were actually going to shoot this on a Saturday night, but we couldn't because you guys ended up being booked on that night. So that just goes to show you that, and that's why I try and stay flexible because, I don't have those time commitments where I have to do it at this exact time, which is why our shows are sometimes inconsistent, but that's what helps us with getting the people on that we do.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. And I'm grateful that you were able to get us, rescheduled. Obviously it's not to say that the podcast isn't more important, but that's part of how I make a living. So it's hard to turn those down. So
that's I mean, my podcast, we're a small podcast. So that's the other reason I try and stay very flexible because there's no, if someone has a larger commitment, they're going to keep the larger commitment over me. That's just the way it goes. That's just kind of common sense to me, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
So yeah, so that's why I try and stay flexible for everybody, and I don't mind redoing, doing it on a Sunday night. It's not a problem at all. Of course, if you're watching this right now, it is likely Tuesday, because that's likely when I'll be releasing it. So now let's talk about you specifically. We got a little history on OVW. Where did you start in wrestling, or talk about like where you grew? If you want to go back that far, talk about where you grew up and what got you into wrestling in the first place.
Sure. So oddly enough, as you've probably had, several podcasts with wrestlers, and they talked about when they were a kid, they just always dreamed of being a wrestler. That's all they ever wanted to do. That's actually not the case with me. I didn't grow up wanting to be a wrestler. Now, don't get me wrong, like every kid in the 80s and the 90s, I was a Hulkamaniac. I was eating my Flintstone vitamins. Don't get me wrong, I was there. I enjoyed wrestling. But I never had the desire growing up to be a wrestler. There's a guy here locally. His name's Jack Black. He was one of OVW's originals. There was an original class that Danny Davis put together before the WWE came along the first time and brought in John Cena and all those guys. There was some local guys that actually started Nightmare Danny Davis. At that time, it was the Danny Davis Nightmare Academy. It wasn't even OVW yet. OVW hadn't even been thought of yet. And Jack Black was one of the original guys there. And he was a real good friend of mine. I grew up with him. I've known him my whole life. And he had the desires to be a wrestler. And he actually was one of the first ones that was actually on a WWE developmental contract. And so he actually was getting paid from WWE for almost 2 years. And he trained with John Cena and all those guys, basically taught them the ropes on how to be a wrestler. And now here they are, the best in the business, the best to do it. But we all start somewhere. And so I was real good friends with Jack. And we worked together outside of wrestling. We worked at a mental hospital. We were, me and him both were what they called MHTs, which stand for mental health tech, which basically glorified bodyguards is what we were. We protected the nurses. So when the nurses had to go in and give medication and stuff, we were the muscle that helped them get that done safely, so they didn't have to worry about anything. My father actually worked at Central State Hospital. He worked his whole career at Central State Hospital. He worked there 25 years. So that's obviously how I came there, and that's how I met, a lot of people. But my father worked there, I worked there, Jack worked there, and like I said, we were good friends. And then my father ended up getting sick. So this was early 1990, late 1999 into 2000. And my father developed renal cancer, which is cancer of the kidneys. And for those that may not know this, it's actually one of the worst places to get cancer because it's an open organ, so it spreads real easy. And that's exactly what happened in my dad's case. My dad found out in October of 2020, and within 3 months he was dead.
Yeah.
It's one of the most aggressive, I wouldn't wish it on anyone, cancers that you could possibly get. But my dad started getting really, really sick really, really fast. And then before my dad had passed, Jack was my best friend. We were always together. Jack was a bigger guy. Jack's 6'4", 500 pounds. He's a big boy. And he on my dad's dying bed, he made a promise to my dad that he would always take care of me and always make sure that I was covered and wouldn't let anything happen to me. And as I said, he was a wrestler. I was just a little scrawny kid that was running around hanging out with him. I would go to the trainings with him. I would see the stuff. I would go to the shows. I would hang out in the locker room. And then over time, it was like, at this time, I'm 19 years old. I turned 20. And then when I turned 20, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be around this. You're having so much fun doing it. Maybe I should start doing this. So I actually originally trained with OVW, and that's how I kind of got my career started. And so I trained, started training. Of course, back then, we're talking 25 years ago now. Times were a little different back then. The wrestling business was, for a better lack of terms, it was like the mafia. You didn't just go to say, I want to be a wrestler and wake up and show up in an arena and get to wrestle. That's not how it worked. We were probably the last generation that pretty much, got the crap beat out of us every single day to prove we wanted to be there. I say that I laugh at some of the kids today. I'm like, I spent 6 months getting the crap beat out of me, putting a ring together, tearing a ring down, begging to get an opportunity. And we can't even get these guys to show up to help us run a show sometimes. We worked our butts off to earn our spots. And we trained for 2 years. I trained for 18 months before I got my first wrestling match. I literally trained just to get the privilege to show up to work security. I mean, that's how it was then. It was a different time. As I said, I think we were probably the last generation that went through that. Just to give a little experience, with my first day of training, they told us to start running. And we started running, and we were like, when do we get to stop running? And literally we were told we weren't going to stop running until somebody quit. That's literally how my first day of training went. And somebody ended up quitting. That's just how it was. And then the next day we ran, and the first person decided to quit had to tear the ring down by themselves after training was over. And this is before we even knew what a ring, how to put a ring together, right? So it was definitely a different time back then. You had to earn your right to be here, and we did that. But that's actually how I got into wrestling, was because of Jack. I had no desire growing up to be a wrestler. So I say in my Facebook post and all my social media, I say established in 2004 because that's actually when I became a wrestler. That's when I actually started wrestling. I've been around the business since 2000, but I didn't actually start wrestling, full time going out, working shows, making money at it until 2004. So that's how I got it started out. And I wrestled, throughout the years at different promotions across different states. And so that's how I got into wrestling. That it was just on knowing somebody that was involved in it, and I got the privilege to meet all the guys that are superstars today, and I got to be around them, and it was a great time back then. And I'm forever grateful for the opportunities that I've had because of the people that I know. I've gotten a lot of situations just because of being in the right place at the right time with the right connections.
Yeah. Actually, you're not the first wrestler I've talked to that was not actually we'll give a shout out to Audrey Allen. Hopefully she doesn't mind. We shout her out on the Boiling Point podcast, not Mayhem Media. But she was somebody we had on, and she was in the gym and someone said, "Hey, you'd be a good wrestler." And that's what kind of got her into it. Like I had a whole episode planned out for her. And the first question was, how you got into wrestling. And she was like, "Oh, I was never a fan." And I was, like in her first two sentences, killed half of my outline. Mm-hmm. How are you going to ask somebody who your inspiration was to get you in the business if you weren't a fan of wrestling before you got in the business?
Right.
So, like half my outline out the window. And yeah, I had to come up with everything on the fly. It was a really fun episode to do though. She actually was this was the same thing. She wasn't really a fan or anything. So it's not the first time I've heard that. It seems to be a little bit more that happens actually a little more frequently than maybe most people think. Now, JMO, you were just talking about a little sidebar here. You were just talking about the way you were trained and the way you were brought into the business as opposed to the way it is now. What do you think one or the other is better, or were they just both necessary for the times that we were in?
You're gonna put me on the spot.
You want me to? You can skip over that question.
Oh no, I don't mind. I don't mind answering it, but I am going to answer it obviously politically because obviously I have personal opinions about that. And but at the same time, I'm in a role in a position where I got to be careful what I say when it comes to specific stuff like that. But I personally, I'm grateful for the way I was brought in. It taught me a lot of respect. It really did. But this is a different time. This is a different generation. This generation wasn't brought up like we were. Like they just weren't. Like it's a different world, and people respond differently. And so, we responded how they wanted us to respond because we wanted it. It was what we wanted. We were willing to do whatever it took to get it. Now, were there situations, obviously looking back, where we may have been taken advantage of and stuff in certain situations just because of the positions they were in and they knew how bad we wanted it? Absolutely. 1,000%. I'm not saying this business is, sunshines and rainbows because it really isn't. But at the same time, the business has changed in the aspect of you don't necessarily have to do that. Like you don't have to, make somebody earn the respect. Just the fact that you're willing to get in there and put your body on the line is enough. I mean, we risk our lives every single time we step to the ropes. There's no easy way to fall. There's no easy way to, to get punched in the face. Like there just isn't. Like so that there's respect in just having the ability and the desire to want to do it and taking the time to learn your craft and to get good at it. We don't need to do some of the things that was done in the past.
Yeah. So what you were saying, if I got that right, is that you're saying, at least in regards to people's health.
Yes.
It's probably a little safer today.
Absolutely. 10 times safer. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I'm old school. So like there's times where I'm like, you know what? Maybe some of these people don't belong in the business because they, maybe they should be buying a ticket. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Wrestling's wrestling. Good wrestling, bad wrestling. Well, there's a place for if you want to be a wrestler, by all means, go do it. Now, would I buy a ticket to your show? Probably not. But there is good wrestling and bad wrestling, and there is, but there's a place for everybody. If you could sell tickets and you can get people to come watch you, my hat's off to you. So,
all right. So let's get to some of the meat of why I wanted to have you on here. You're a wrestler. You're in the business. What happens? Something happens, and you end up having to partially retire, or.
Sure, and that's actually what led me to be an agent at OVW.
Because you wanted to still be in the business, but you couldn't still go in the ring.
Absolutely. So
what was it that happened?
Sure. So in 2016,
Many.
I met her, of course. I met her before.
Wrestling.
Yeah. So I around. Sorry if I get emotional, guys.
No, it's okay.
I'm grateful for every day, but there's parts of stuff that I don't think about constantly. And so
Of course.
when I go back and I talk about it,
let me ask you this real quick before you get into the full story. Then were you because what got me was that you mentioned God and Jesus, that you're a believer. Were you a believer before this happened?
Absolutely.
Still,
Yeah, absolutely.
okay.
I was a believer, but obviously, I'm not. I'm not. I don't go to church. I didn't go to church every week. I'm not a. I'm not a. A devoted Christian as far as I'm preaching the word and opening the Bible and bringing people into my home for Bible studies. That's not who I was. I was living the life of a wrestler. I was. So I am 1000%. There's not an ounce of life in me that I know 1000%. The only reason I'm here is because God allows me to be here, and I'm grateful for every breath I get to take. And I hate that it took what I had to go through to get to where I am today, but it doesn't change the fact that I am extremely grateful for every single day that I get to live on this earth. I wake up every day grateful for every breath I get to take.
Yeah, it goes to the point. I've talked about this. We had Pastor Gavin on several episodes of the Boiling Point podcast. I know him personally. I've known him for many years, and he's our senior faith correspondent. When anytime we talk about something like that, we bring him in. And one of the reoccurring themes that always gets brought up, because it's always one of the things that people who don't believe ask, is why do bad things happen to good people? And one time he said, it's like I can't remember if it was he said, but it was an analogy that when you're sharpening steel, you're grinding it down and making it sharp. That's a very violent process.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why sometimes we have to experience these things to get to become the people that we are supposed to be. And there's no other way, like you were saying, there's likely no other way you're going to get to where you are now other than that route.
Absolutely. And when you hear my story, you're gonna once we get through this whole thing, it's unbelievable. Like, and being on the front side of things and then get into where I am now, it doesn't click until you get to where you are now. Like, it doesn't. But looking back, so let's go back.
How's it start?
Yeah, so November 2016, it was Christmas shopping time. It was Black Friday, actually. It was the weekend of Black Friday. She was out shopping. I was at home watching a Louisville game. I'm a huge Cardinals fan. Go Cards. And I was watching the Cardinals game, and it was halftime. And I get up off my couch. Keep in mind, before this, it was a normal day. We had got up and went to the gym that morning. It was a normal day. Nothing wrong. Wasn't sick, anything. And I get up from the couch watching the Louisville game, and I collapsed. Literally just passed out on the floor. Came to, didn't know what happened. Called my wife, said, hey, something's not right. I literally just passed out on the floor. She comes rushing home. They rush me to the hospital. They start doing labs. And next thing you know, I'm being rushed into emergency surgery because my body was shutting down. My body was already septic. They told her that afternoon, they told her that I had about a 5% chance that I was going to make it out of surgery. That my body was literally, I don't know the exact percentage septic. My body was pretty much just taken over by infection.
Yeah. Wow. It just happened that fast.
That fast. And obviously, so we're scared. We're thinking I got the flu. We're thinking I picked up a virus. Like, I'm thinking I'm dying. Like, maybe I don't know what happened, but I just passed out. Something's not right. Maybe I'm dehydrated. Maybe I'm an IV. I'm going into emergency surgery. So obviously, we're talking today. So obviously, I made it through the surgery. And after the surgery, they sent me home. Probably, I think they kept me a day or two in the hospital just to get my white blood count back down and stuff. And they had different specialists come in and talk to us. And they sent me to a liver specialist. And we go meet with this liver specialist. I'm not sure exactly the time, maybe 2 or 3 days after I got sent home. It was pretty fast. Mm-hmm. But they sent me to this liver specialist, and it's the first time I found out what was going on. I was diagnosed with a condition called primary sclerosing cholangitis, which is PSC for short. And to put it into terms so everyone will be able to understand, it's inflammation of your bile ducts. So basically, there was inflammation in my bile ducts that would close my bile ducts to seal off. And when that happened, all my fluid and all my bile would back up in the liver, cause pressure in my liver, cause all kinds of nice fun problems.
Yeah.
So basically, when that would happen, I would experience the same thing that somebody with end-stage liver failure would experience. That happened to me that first day. And so we're like, okay, well, what do we need to do? We were like, first, we got to address this other issue. You've got some gallstones that have built up in your bile ducts, and it looks like there's some gallstones that are packed up into your gallbladder. So we need to take your gallbladder out.
I can relate to that.
They took me in. They took my gallbladder out. When they took my gallbladder out, I felt amazing. I felt like, okay, I'm good. We got this under control. I ain't got nothing to worry about. I'm good. Probably went 6 months. Didn't hear from anybody. Didn't talk to nobody. I started getting sick. I'm like, okay, what's going on? So they take me in. They take me back to the same liver specialist, Dr. Vitale. Dr. Vitale, yeah, Dr. Vitale. So they take me back to. We go to this liver specialist. He says, well, no, you're not good. You still have this condition. This condition isn't going to go away. Like, what do you mean this condition ain't going to go away? It's the only cure for this condition is a liver transplant. And man, talk about taking the wind out of your sails.
I would imagine so. Yeah, that's got to be
wind out of my sails.
Yeah, that's got to be something.
So Dr. Vitality tells me at that time, I'll be honest with you, this is something that's even beyond my scope. This is something more that I can help you with. Like, this is something that's going to take, a team of specialists to be able to help you with.
Because it's a rare disease.
It's a rare disease, and it's so rare. There's not a lot of research in it, so there's not a lot of, which made me pause when you said about your condition being rare, because that's the same thing with PSC. And because it's so rare, there's not a lot of research in it. That's why they don't know. That's why there's no cure, because they don't know what causes it. If they don't know the cause, there's no effect. So there's no cure for it. So they send me to University of Louisville Hospital, and I meet Dr. Barbay for the first time. And, sorry.
No, take your time.
I'm reliving it as I'm saying it.
Absolutely.
It was pretty rough.
I'm just glad that obviously, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to speak about this on other shows or anything like that. So I'm just glad that I have this show to be able to give this, you this opportunity. So that makes me happy.
And I appreciate that. I do. I really am. And I have talked about it. I've had, other podcasts ask me questions, but it's never been an in-depth conversation. Yeah. So I'm glad that you are giving me the opportunity to do this. Even though I don't like crying in front of people, It does feel good to be able to get the story out, because I don't want anyone to have to go through what I went through. I know what it feels like to go through what I went through. And if I could change one person's life, then I've done my job. And we've done our job. You're an avenue for this just as well as I am, and I'm grateful for that. So I go to the University of Louisville, meet with Dr. Barbay, and they're like, "This is PSC. This is the breakdown of the condition. You've got inside your bile ducts. They're really small, but then when the infection builds up, it literally just closes off my bile ducts. That's what would happen." He said, "We got this procedure called an ERCP." Which is the first time I learned about this procedure, which I ended up having several over the next couple of years. So they would go in and they would take through a endoscopy procedure. They would go in microscopically with a balloon, and basically what they would do, they would stick that balloon in there and they would blow it up and they would dilate the inflammation. There was no way to get rid of it, but they could dilate it to open up the bile ducts again. So when they do that, I would feel better. My numbers would start going back down. I would feel better. And so at the beginning, when this happened, and they told me about this procedure, they did this procedure, and I felt better. I'm like, great, let's go. Let's do this. I'm good. This was the very first time this happened. Yeah. 3 months later, I get sick again. And we go back to Dr. Barbay. We're like, listen, doc, this is what do we got to do here? And he said, once again, he tells me the only thing that's going to cure this is a liver transplant. Like, you know what, doc? This is 8 months in now. Okay, if that's what it's going to take, let's do it. I feel like I'm dying. Let's do this, doc. So this is 8 months in now. So I'm like, doc, let's do this liver transplant. Oh, we can't do your liver transplant. What do you mean? He said, you don't qualify for a liver transplant. What do you mean I don't qualify for a liver transplant? I'm dying. Like, what do I got to do? Die? Like, this makes no sense to me. He said, well, the problem is, you've got this milk score system, and you have to be sick enough to qualify for the transplant list. And in your case, you've got this condition that makes your liver a secondary condition. Your liver is not your problem right now. It's because you have PSC that you're experiencing these things. And we have this procedure where we could go in and we could fix it for you. Well, you're not fixing anything. Basically, the only thing you're doing is putting a Band-Aid on it. But at that time, this is what my doctors are telling me. So why don't I believe them, right? I've got to trust this is what the doctors are telling me I got to do to be healthy. Okay, let's do it. So we're a year in now. I've already had 2 RCPs done. I've already lost my gallbladder. And I'm getting sick again. And I'm getting, this time, each time it seems to be getting a little worse and worse. For the first time a year in, I start turning yellow. I started getting jaundice.
Wow.
And man.
How scary was that for you, Mrs. JMO? Like, because you're a part of this, you experienced it with him.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about it for a moment from the other side.
It was very scary because, at that time when he first got sick, the very first night, we had only been married for 3 months.
Yeah.
Like we really got married in August and he got sick in November. So it hadn't been very long. And then, going in and that night they're like, give him a good hard kiss because he may not make it out. I'm like, oh, am I going to be a widow in 3 months already? And, so, and then just constantly like having more questions and having answers, having, it's a rare disease. We're going to pass you on to this person, pass you on to this person. Just the not knowing part was the worst part because it was like, we had all these questions and then they were like, oh, well, we could do this, but, so it's like we didn't know anything.
Yeah. That has to be the worst part is not the not knowing or the unknown.
Absolutely the worst part. Terrible. It was the worst part altogether. And the thing is, I'm her husband. In her eyes, I'm the strongest man she knows, right? Mm-hmm. And, every wife thinks their husband's the strongest man they know. And I was dying. I lost a tremendous amount of weight. People don't realize how important your liver is. Like your liver controls everything in your body.
That's your filter. That's your filter.
It's your filter. It's it helps your body obtain nutrients. Like literally, I couldn't obtain any nutrients. I was literally just withering away to nothing. Like I was ghost. When I wasn't jaundice, I was pale. I was ghost. My skin just looked bad. I looked like I was dying.
Were you not able to eat while this was happening or drink or like what was?
So I could eat, but I couldn't obtain any nutrients. So it really didn't matter what I could eat. They ended up putting me on a low sodium diet. So I couldn't eat anything with salt in it.
How much salt is in there?
Salt's in everything. So I put me on a low salt. And the reason is because one of the things you experience when your liver starts acting up is your body starts absorbing fluids. So now we're a year and a half in. I'm swollen up like all get out. I go in and they got to put a big 20-inch long needle in my stomach and drain fluid off of me. So once again, this happens. We go in and we're like, what is this? We're like, oh, that's just something else that happens with this condition. Lily, my wife's like, could you give us a list? So when this stuff happens, we're not just blindsided with what's going on. And they were like, no, well, we can't give you a list because it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
There's stuff that can happen, but we can't tell you until it happens to you because we don't know what it's going to be because it's like, once again, it's so rare we don't know.
And what, they don't want to give you the list of potential side effects because of what? With your placebo effect? They think maybe you'll manifest it in your own head?
Yeah. Exactly. Well, that's what
really?
They put it on a prescription bottle. Like, why not give me a list of possibilities so we can be prepared for this stuff?
Like, well, everybody gets all the symptoms, so we don't want to, and you not get it. I'm like, but I want to be prepared if it does happen.
Right.
So I can be like, okay, you know.
So that's really I was just joking. That's really
Yeah,
the reason.
no, yeah, they would not give it.
Yeah.
So this goes on every 3 to 6 months for a solid 2 years.
Mhm.
So for a solid 2 years, I would get sick. I would go in. They would do the CRCP. They would open me back up, and I would feel better. I'd feel like my old self again. So I'd feel like I was good to go. And then it would repeat itself. I would slowly start getting sick. So after, this is probably, I've had this procedure done probably 6 or 7 times at this point. I've had all this other stuff.
If I could, how long are you sick or are you
Well,
feeling bad before you get the procedure?
So it's pretty fast.
Yeah.
So like it would happen pretty fast. Like I would start feeling bad. I would know after the first couple of rounds, I knew what this. That she would notice my eyes would turn yellow. I would get literally my eyes were glowing. I looked like an alien.
So they didn't.
So she didn't know it sometimes before I would.
So they didn't make you wait once you felt the symptoms or got the initial things.
Right. Once I started getting to the point where I was getting sick and it was noticeable, they would get me right in. I would literally obviously had an assistant. I would call his assistant and say, "Hey, my eyes are yellow." Boom! I was within 2 or 3 days. I was in the hospital getting the procedure done. They were pretty fast with getting me in.
Do you have insurance at this point?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
The grace of God, yes. Because if you don't have insurance, you're in trouble in this world.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was like, are you guys taking these costs out of pocket, or is at least the insurance covering it?
Yeah, no. At this point, I'm still working. Thankfully. So early 2021, we're constantly asking, what can we do? So like at this point, like I'm sick. Like at my best, my eyes are mildly yellow. At my best.
Like, so you're not getting the full effects from the treatment anymore.
Exactly.
No.
It literally was getting worse and worse. I was withering away to nothing. Like I said, I had no energy. I had no life. Like I was lifeless. I was alive, but I was lifeless.
Yeah.
And so we go in. We're like, I need to have this transplant. We've got to get this transplant done. So they were like, you know what? We agree with you. Let's see if we can get you qualified for the transplant list. So this is 2021. They had me go through all these tests and stuff. I basically passed all their tests saying I'm healthy enough to get this transplant done. Then my apparently my profile or whatever was sent to a state registry board or whatever, and they had to review it to see if they're going to list me on the list. I was told no. I was told they weren't going to put me on the list. That I wasn't sick enough. I was dying, but I wasn't sick enough.
Yeah.
So progressively through 2021, I'm getting worse. Probably around June, so it's about 6 months into June 2021, I go in, they run some tests. I say finally, because we're talking 4 years in now, I developed cirrhosis of the liver.
Oh, lovely.
It's cirrhosis of the liver, as you can imagine. I mean, that's it. Like you're officially on your way to death's door.
Yeah, you got it. Now you do need the transplant.
I do need the transplant, exactly. So this is 2021. This is late 2021. So I go to my specialist. Hey, now that I've got cirrhosis, can we get me listed? No, we can't get you listed. You don't qualify. Once again, your condition is primary sclerosing cholangitis. So your liver is secondary to the condition. So you're not going to qualify for the transplant list. But don't worry, Mr. Allen. We're going to give you these ERCPs and we're going to make you feel better. And we're going to keep you alive. That's what they're telling me. So December of 2022. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm leaving some stuff out. Like I'm not. It's hard for me to remember every single detail. Obviously, 2021 and then 2022, it was not great. There were several things that happened that I probably can't even remember. She could probably remember more than I can.
If Mrs. JMO, jump in if there's anything that he doesn't remember or skips over. Feel free to hop in if there's information.
So December of 2022, I wake up. And I don't even know who I am. I don't know who I am. I don't know who my wife is. But I know that I got to go to work. And I couldn't even turn my alarm clock off. I didn't even know how to work my cell phone to turn my alarm clock off. Like, I literally had, I guess she ended up turning it off for me. I don't remember exactly. But I couldn't even turn my alarm clock off. But I'm telling her I got to go to work. I got to go to work. And this time she don't realize that I don't know what's going on. Like she don't know, the extent. She just knows something's not right.
Yeah.
She knows I'm not right.
At that time I was working from home, and he, like, for me, he was kind of off, but he was just reassuring me that he was okay. And I said, well, because if you're not feeling, like, you don't feel like you're looking good, or you don't look like you're feeling good, so I was like, maybe you should just call your boss and ask for the work if you can work from home things. No, I'm good. I'm gonna go now.
So
Okay.
you're coherent enough that you can tell her you're okay, even though you're not.
Right.
So
But you're not coherent enough.
So I get in my car.
You're not, but you're not coherent enough to understand anything other than you got to go to work.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're okay, and you got to go to work. But
I apparently get in my car.
I don't know.
I apparently get in my car and I drive to work. To this day, I could not tell you how I got to work. I do not remember how I got to work. I don't. I could not tell you how I got there. But apparently, I got in my car and I drove myself to work. We know this now after the fact, but so I drive myself to work. I get to work, and apparently, I can't even clock in. Like I've worked at this point. I've worked at my job for 7 years. My clock in information had not changed. I know it by heart. I couldn't clock in. My director comes over and she notices immediately something's not right. She's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I can't clock in." She's like, "What do you mean you can't clock in?" I was like, "My username and password's not working." She's like, "What do you mean your username and password's not working?" And I know all this because conversations I've had after, but at the time,
you have no idea. Yeah.
So I'm out of it. And so she thinks I'm having a stroke. She's not putting 2 and 2 together. I mean, why would we? This isn't something that's ever happened to me before. We weren't told this was going to happen.
Yeah.
So she assumes I'm having a stroke. So she calls EMS, then calls my wife and says, "Something's wrong with your husband."
Well, so every morning when he gets to work, he always calls me or he texts me, and he always says, "I made it. I love you. I'll talk to you later." That morning, and I was already on edge a little bit anyway when he left because in my gut I knew something just wasn't right with him. And so he hadn't called me, hadn't texted me. And I'm like, maybe I should just, So I called him and I said, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "I'm trying to clock in." And I said, "Shouldn't you already be clocked in?" He goes, "I can't clock in." And I said, "What do you mean you can't clock in?" He said, "I don't remember my stuff." And he goes, "And I think Audrey called an ambulance because she thinks I'm having a stroke." And I was like, "Oh my God." So now I'm like freaking out because I'm like, why did I let him leave the house? I knew, but I mean, he was blatantly reassuring me he was fine.
Yeah, how are you supposed to know? There's no
right.
So I mean,
apparently, when the ambulance get there, apparently I didn't know my date of birth.
No,
I didn't know where I was from. I couldn't tell him where the president was. Like I was out.
So you were going to the hospital.
Yeah, they get me to the hospital and stuff, and all kinds of tests on me and stuff. And they still really, I don't think they ever told us anything at the hospital. Like they never diagnosed me with anything at the hospital. They gave me some fluids and stuff. I started feeling better. I started getting my memory back. And they ended up sending me home from the hospital. Like the next day, they kept me overnight, obviously for observation because of how I was when I got there. But they ended up sending me home. Wow. So they sent me home. And this were like when we got to my Jeep and when we got back to my work, I was parked in 4 different places. Like apparently I was like, I don't even know how I got, once again, by the grace of God, I didn't die driving to work. Like, cause I couldn't tell you how I got there. So we ended up calling the liver specialist. They get me in pretty much the next day. They got me into my liver specialist office. Yeah. And this is the first time we find out about
hepatic encephalopathy.
I still can't say the word to this day, so I have to
say it again. Lean forward, Mrs. JMO, and say it again.
Hepatic encephalopathy, so it's HE for short.
So I get HE for the first time. So we go into my liver specialist. They tell us what this is, and apparently, what it is the toxins in my blood had built up and went to my brain. So there's ammonia in your blood that your liver filters, and when that ammonia builds up, it caused you to not be able to remember shit. So I have this condition now called HE. They tell me at that time I'm not allowed to drive. I'm not allowed to work. I'm not allowed to do anything because it can literally happen at any moment. At any moment, I could wake up and not know who I was.
They told me that the doctor looked at me and he said, sorry, Be prepared, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when he gets an episode. And these episodes can go very mildly, like the one he had was apparently mild, which I don't know how that's mild, to where he can go into absolute fits of rage and possibly hurt himself or somebody else because he doesn't understand what's going on.
Yeah, because he doesn't know. Yeah.
And so they're looking at me and they're saying, be prepared because, and I'm like, okay, well, what do we do now? Like, why is he not on the list? And they're like, well, unfortunately, and this is what he said to me, unfortunately, this is just an inconvenience. And I said, by all means, and with all due respect, this is more than an inconvenience that he wakes up and doesn't know who I am and doesn't know where he is.
This is a problem.
This is a problem. Why are we not taking this more? Like, how is this just an
So she's like, does he qualify for the transplant list now? No, he doesn't. He doesn't.
Wow.
So that exactly. They literally just took my life away from me. I couldn't drive. I couldn't work. You mean to tell me I can't drive and work? Doc, what am I supposed to do? Just sit at home and die? Like, are you serious right now? I was extremely upset. I was devastated. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was sick. I probably didn't need to be driving. Probably didn't need to be working. But I was determined to be able to continue to live my life. If this is the life I gotta live, I'm gonna live it.
Yeah.
And they were taking that out. They were taking that opportunity away from me. So this is the part of the story that changes my life to this day, and I'm extremely grateful for it. So February of 2023, I go to my primary care doctor. And my primary care doctor has been my primary care doctor since I was 19 years old. So he's been my primary doctor for a little bit. Yeah. So he knows me. He knows me inside and out. And he is just baffled. He is just baffled that I have not at least been put on the transplant list. Yeah. Like, when you get listed on the transplant list, you can sit on that list for years.
Yeah, it's still the years even once you're on the list. Yeah.
It is by the grace of God that you even get a transplant when everything plays out like it's supposed to. Yes. They're telling me consistently I don't qualify for the transplant list to be listed. Yeah. Basically telling me, we know you're dying, but you're not dying fast enough.
Yeah.
So therefore, you don't qualify this transplant list. It's secondary to your condition. So my doctor at this point is like, this is going too far. Like, you can't work, you can't drive, you can't do nothing. There's nothing left to you. The only thing left for you to do is die right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to let that happen to you. We're going to get a second opinion. He says, do you want to go to the University of Cincinnati or do you want to go to the University of Philadelphia? I said, I don't care, doctor. I'll go wherever I got to go. Whatever it takes to get this done, I'm willing to do. So he calls both. He calls in a referral to both places. University of Cincinnati was the first one to call me. So this was February 17th of 2023. They called me 2 days later and scheduled me an appointment for a consultation to come in. University of Cincinnati. University of Cincinnati. Met the guy by the name of Travis Dottie, which I'm forever grateful for. Great human being, saved my life. So I go to University of Cincinnati in the first week of March of 2023. Meet Travis, which he's a transplant coordinator at that time. Go through my entire history with him, go through everything we've been through, go through all my sicknesses, go through all my labs, go through everything I've been through. He tells me that day, we're going to get you transplanted. We are going to save your life. I've been told this for 5 years at this point. 6 years is how long was it? So 6 years at this point, almost 7 years, 6 years at this point. I've been told no so many times. I've been told I don't qualify. I've been told that my condition is my liver is secondary to this condition. So therefore that disqualifies me from the transplant list, which, by the way, is not true. So if you're listening to this story and a doctor tells you that, run as far as you can to another facility. If you could get to the University of Cincinnati, you need a liver transplant, by all means get to the university. I promise you they will save your life. It is not true. It is not true. If there's anything I want your listeners to understand, PCS does destroy your liver, and it is not secondary to your condition. You do qualify for a liver transplant if you have cirrhosis of the liver, period.
So if I can, absolutely, I can't believe what I'm hearing right now, honestly. That's a whole nother episode. I want to have you on now for a whole nother episode so we can talk about the doctors who messed up for years. Did you on a sidebar, just quick sidebar, did you ever try and pursue any kind of anything against them?
It's not who I am. And I'll tell this part of the story too, because there's a part of this story when we get to the end of this, I'll tell it. But no, I did not. I did not try to sue them. I should have, but I didn't.
I understand.
Because I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't go through everything I went through. So by the grace of God, I'm here, and I'm extremely grateful for it. And everything happens for a reason. Yeah. God's plan is God's plan. Everything happens for a reason. That's another thing that your listeners need to know. Trust me, whatever you're going through, whatever it is, I promise you, there's a reason you're going through it, and you have to go through it. I'm sorry, but you do. Trust me, I wouldn't be on this side of things if it didn't. And once y'all hear this entire story, and you hear from the start to finish, you're going to be like, oh my gosh. Like, I am a walking miracle. I really am. So I meet Travis. This is March, 11th of 2023. He tells me, you definitely qualify for a transplant. We've got to get you in. We're going to get you transplanted. I promise you, we're going to save your life. He tells me this in March. Mind you, I've been going through this for 6 years, and I've been told no time and time again. And I've been ingrained in my head that this condition is secondary. My liver is secondary to this condition, which disqualifies me from a transplant. So we're at the best mildly believing they're going to give me a liver transplant. So to get listed on a transplant list, there's several things you have to go through. There is literally a list of procedures you have to get done to make sure that your body can survive a transplant, which is what makes what I had to go through, what everybody that has conditions like this have to go through. Yes, you have to be sick enough to qualify for a liver transplant, but you have to be healthy enough to have received the transplant. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, they're not fortunate enough to meet that window. There's a point to where your body gets too sick and your body isn't healthy enough, and you won't get the transplant because they're not going to give you a transplant if your body can't survive.
And at that point, we were literally scared because he was literally withered away. I
had nothing left.
So we were he wasn't going.
We were prepared for me not to pass this
because of that reason.
Because of this.
Yeah,
reason.
How about that? Like the delay.
Yeah.
Cause you to be potentially
that
you could not have gotten it at all. That's
exactly. So I go through all these tests and procedures. Obviously, with everything, I had to go through. It took a little time. So this was March, April, May, June, July. So we're talking 4 months. 4 months from the time I met these people.
Yeah.
Let's get to July 11th of 2023. I got to the point where I'd passed everything. So I was prepared to be able to be accepted for a transplant. So we go in on July 12th of 2023, and we meet with the transplant team. We meet with the doctors. We meet with the nutritionists. We meet with the nurses. We meet with the pharmacists. We literally meet with everybody that's involved on the transplant team at the University of Cincinnati. They all hear my story. They all look at my history. They all look at everything. They look at everything on my tests that I had done. At the end of this, we spent pretty much all day at the University of Cincinnati on July 12th. At the end of this, they tell us that they're going to get together. They're going to have a discussion as a team, and they will be contact with us within 24 hours to let me know if I qualify. Not if I qualify, because you do qualify. That's not true. Yeah. If I'm going to be listed for the transplant list. Before we even make it back to Louisville, so we're talking 90-minute drive from Cincinnati to Louisville. Before we even make it back, they call me and tell me I'm listed.
Wow.
Oh, the transplant list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Everything that we had done up to this point led to that moment. Literally struggling to be alive, to be told no, to basically feel like I'm not good enough, like you're not important enough to be transplanted, like you're just going to die. I had come to the conclusion that I was going to die. Like I had to live knowing that this condition was going to kill me and there was nothing I could do about it because of what I had been told all the way up to this point.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want anyone to have to live that way. That's why I say if you're in need, I don't care if you're at the University of Cincinnati, which I know will happen from what I went through, and they tell you that you don't qualify, go somewhere else, get a second opinion.
Yeah,
Please
always get a second opinion.
Always
Get a second opinion.
third,
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
you trust the doctor. You know what I mean? The doctors are
So-
always influenced by their prejudice and their own personal things. So always try to get a second
And I
opinion.
know that now. And when I tell you the rest of the story, you're gonna understand that. So July 12th, I get listed. The next day, I get a phone call. So when you get listed for a transplant, you are on call 24/7, 7 days a week. They can literally call you at any moment, say, "We have a liver. You need to get to the hospital as quick as possible."
Well, I mean, it's not even just as quick as possible. Wouldn't they give you a time limit? Like you
They
have
do.
X
They do.
hours to get to this
they do.
hospital. Or the liver's
Yeah,
going somewhere else.
literally, that you have to be in surgery within 4 hours of them getting delivered.
Yeah.
So we're on the clock. They tell us to be prepared to be in the hospital for 6 to 8 weeks. Basically, we have to have our luggage packed by the door, ready to run out the door at any moment. So they literally call me the next day and say that they have a liver that is a match. So my life stands still, obviously, at this point. Like, oh my gosh, this is gonna happen. But once again, when you're talking about liver transplant, everything has to fall into place. Everything has to be right. And it ended up the liver wasn't good. The liver ended up having, something that did not pass all the qualifications to get it. So I got a call back, and
was it
devastating. That was absolutely devastating to think I'm getting a transplant and then being told, "Sorry, this isn't the one for you."
Was it that it wasn't going to work for you, or was it that there was a problem with the organ itself? Or
don't know all the details. Don't know all the details.
You just know you couldn't get it.
I just know it didn't go to me. That's all I know. So obviously that was a roller coaster. That was, oh my gosh, we waited for this. This has been 7 years in the making. Oh my gosh, I'm actually going to get my liver transplant, and now I'm not.
Well, it was like when we left the hospital and he got put on the list, we were just kind of like, what do we do now? We were just kind of sitting ducks. And they told us, go home, literally go home, pack your suitcase, have a bag, have this, have that ready. Like literally go home and do that right now. Because at any moment it could be the call. And so we're just sitting ducks at that point. We're just looking at each other like, what do we do? Like we had been prepared, like we had been fighting for so long to make it to the list. Now that we're to the list, what happens? What do we do? We're just sitting here. We're waiting, and the waiting
is the
worst part.
Yeah. So at like any moment.
So every ounce of this story is nothing but godsend. It really is. There's no other way to describe it. So mind you, people said on the liver transplant for years, I got to call the next day. That just does not happen.
Well, and also, it worked in his favor because he has the rare blood type is like B positive and B negative. It's one of the two.
Oh, you have a rare blood type too.
I do. So it actually makes it a little.
They told us.
Yeah, it makes it even more harder. Yeah, because
they told us that it would make it easier to find him a liver because not many people are waiting for that type of.
That's true. Yeah, you didn't think.
Me up the list faster is what they said.
Yeah. They said that's kind of in his favor.
So 12 days after I got listed, July 22nd of 2024, or 2023, so I got the call that they had my liver. And my life just stood still. Like literally we had begged and pleaded, prayed, cried.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, this is the second time they called.
Yeah.
We had begged and pleaded and every ounce in me trying to stay alive, fought day in and day out for 7 years to get to this point. And I finally got the call that they have a liver. It's on its way to Cincinnati, and I need to get to Cincinnati as quick as possible. It is 97 minutes. It is 97 minutes from Louisville to Cincinnati. Guess how long it took me to get to Cincinnati that night?
60 minutes.
Was not about 45 minutes.
45.
I did not spare no expense. They weren't gonna. There was nothing that was gonna stop me from getting out. I told my wife, and my mother was with me too. I said, if we get pulled over, they're following us to Cincinnati. They can give me all the tickets they want in the world, but they're following me to Cincinnati. So we get to Cincinnati. It's nothing short of a miracle. We get there, they get me right in. They get me on the table. They're getting me all hooked up. It's here. It's finally here. I'm getting my liver transplant. And I got my liver. I got my liver, and it's man. I'd spent 7 years fighting and begging and pleading for this moment. It was finally here. I finally was getting my liver transplant. So I had my liver transplant. I was in surgery, what, 8 hours?
No.
6 hours?
They said that it would take 8 to 10 hours. He was only in surgery for about 5 or 6 hours.
Wow, that's good too.
Yeah.
So here's the part of the story that God's just showing off. This
All right.
is God showing off. It really is. There's no other way to describe it. So after the fact, I was in ICU obviously for a couple of days, and we could talk about that if we need to. But I was on a ventilator, and anytime you get on a ventilator, they got to wean you off of it. First couple of times they tried to take me off of it, my body didn't respond. And so obviously she's having to deal with that, having to deal with me possibly not even coming off this ventilator.
Yeah, were you conscious at all during that, or were you unconscious during that time?
And me all,
No.
yeah, I was out. Man, you said there was a wall of just machines that they had.
Yeah. When they came and got us, they were like, okay, he's gonna look worse than what he really is. The surgeon went great. He's fine. There's gonna be a wall of just machines and IVs. We'll wean him off of those very eventually,
Yeah.
And so
because they want your body to rest as much as possible,
Yeah.
because it is a hard surgery, so they want you to be as comfortable as possible.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm pretty medicated.
Yeah, and so when you walk in there, like, you prepare yourself, but you don't really prepare yourself. So when I go in, they have him in the little ICU room, and I see the wall of IV pumps, and then they've got him. His hands are strapped to the bed, like strapped to the sides of the bed, because he has a breathing tube in, and they don't want him waking up and pulling that out.
Pulling it out. Yep.
And he's very sedated, so he's laying there with the tube in his mouth. And I've never seen him like this. Usually when somebody's on a ventilator, they look like this. They're not coming out of that. That's been my experience anyway. So as your wife, you're like, we're on the other side of this, but it was kind of a little scary for me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, he looks worse than he was. So it was like,
yes, and everything that's happened.
yeah, and then you're like, oh my gosh, what did we just agree to? Is it gonna be fine? Was the surgery worth it? So
yeah.
So then we get to 48 hours later.
Mhm.
I come off the ventilator. I'm feeling amazing. Like, I'm feeling better than I've ever felt in my life. I'm feeling great. The surgeon comes in and talks to us, and this is where I say God was showing off. But this was God's way of telling me that this is where you had to be. That everything that I went through, I had to go through to be where I was. I wouldn't have made it to where I was if I didn't go through what I went through. Now, don't get me wrong. I honestly feel like I would be just as grateful today if I wouldn't have had to go through all that.
Mhm.
But I can promise you, I'm extremely grateful for where I am today because of what I had to go through. So the doctor comes in. He says, I've never seen anything like this in 15 years. I've been doing transplants for 15 years. Every vessel, every vein, every portal was a perfect match for my body.
Wow.
He said it's so common when they do a transplant that they have to adjust a portal. They have to adjust a vein to change it to fit your body, to fit
because
your
all the same doesn't mean that every little itty bitty vein and every single thing is connected.
Literally every vein was a perfect match. He said it was like the person who had my liver was literally holding my liver till I absolutely had to have it, and God gave it to me.
Wow.
He'd never seen anything like it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So God was definitely showing off that day, and God was definitely telling me, hey, listen, I got you. I promise I got you, but I had to get you here to get you what I gave you.
Yeah.
I 1000% believe that, and nobody can convince me otherwise until I take my last breath and I have a conversation with the good man himself, and he tells me exactly why I had to go through because I am going to ask, why'd you make me go through that? And I'm sure he'll have an answer for me.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure.
Part of me feels like I was being humbled. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't, like I said before this, I wasn't living, my best life. I was living my best life, but it wasn't, I wouldn't say
Your
it was
best godly life. You were
Exactly.
living your best life, but you weren't living your best godly life.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I do 100% believe sometimes we get humbled. I do believe that, and I think in my case that some of that may be true. But every vein, every vessel is a perfect match. You've never seen anything like it. And this is the other part of the conversation that he told us. And this is the part where I probably could have tried to pursue suing U of L. I probably could have. And I was extremely mad. And there was a point where because they were doing follow-ups every 6 months. And so I had another follow-up visit scheduled after I'd gotten home from my transplant. And I literally at the last minute called and canceled it. I was going to go just to give him every piece of mind I had. But let me get to what the surgeon told me. So the surgeon tells me, listen, I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they did anything malpractice. I can't say that because they did keep you alive. They were doing things that kept you alive. What I will say is this is the most infected case of bile ducts I have ever seen in as long as I've been doing this. He said my bile ducts were so infected. There's no way, absolutely, in his medical opinion, why I should not have at least been on a transplant list at least 3 years before I was.
Wow.
Yep.
He said there's no other way to describe it. The only thing that makes sense is every time they did an ERCP to me, they were getting paid 60, 70 grand from my insurance to do those procedures. It's literally the only thing that makes sense. Nothing else makes sense. There's no medical reason I should have been at least listed. He said, I can't tell you and I can't guarantee you that you have received a transplant before now because you just never know when it comes to a transplant list, but you should have at least, you were medically sick enough to have at least been listed on the transplant list.
Yeah.
Basically, what they were doing is, so to qualify for a liver transplant, there is a thing called a MELD score. And basically what your MELD score is, the higher your number, the more likelihood you have to die within the next 90 days. That's what your MELD score determines. So you do have to meet the certain criteria because a transplant isn't something you take lightly. There has to be a medical necessity for you to get a liver transplant. But I definitely was medical necessity for a transplant. They just weren't giving it to me. So there is, but what they were doing is, so when my bile ducts would get backed up, my MELD score would rise. Yeah. So like pretty much you're going to die within the next week is a 45. I would get to like a 37 when my bile ducts were back up. I was literally experiencing the same thing that someone on end-stage liver failure would experience every 3 months. Can you imagine that? Could you imagine practically dying every 3 months?
Yeah, no, I can't even.
That's what was happening to me. But what they would do when they would do these ERCPs, they would lower my MELD. So technically, they didn't lie to me because if my MELD score wasn't high enough, I don't qualify for a liver transplant. Basically, what they were doing is they were putting a Band-Aid on the fact. Yeah. And they were doing an ECRP. They were doing the ERCPs to keep me from qualifying for the transplant list.
Yeah, that's crazy. But I like how you're taking. I like how you're taking it though. That's why you didn't sue or whatever because you apparently needed to wait that long to end up with the perfect liver in the first place.
Exactly. And trust me, I've had lots of talks. I've had lots of talks with the man upstairs. I really have. And I 1000% believe that I would not be here today if everything that happened didn't happen the way it happened.
Yeah.
What really solidified this for me is I've actually got the privilege, and I say privilege because it's an honor. I got the privilege to speak with the donor's family. Mm-hmm. So when you go through a liver transplant, the hospital is not allowed to tell you who your donor was because of HIPAA. Mm-hmm. But what they do through the Life Center, they give you the opportunity to write an anonymous letter to them. And then they have the capabilities, if they choose to respond to you. But it's completely up to them. If they don't respond, you never know who it is.
Yeah.
Gracefully, in my place, the family responded to me. So I wrote a letter to them, and then they responded back to me, and they were extremely happy to hear from me. They have 3 girls, and their youngest is 6 years old, and she's just so happy that her dad got to be a hero. And so hearing the other side of this miracle story changed my entire outlook. And it's one of the reasons why I didn't pursue U of L, because if I didn't go through what I went through, I wouldn't be. And this part of the story is where I can 1000% solidify that God knows what he's doing and everything happens for a reason. So the last thing that I had to get done before my transplant was a colonoscopy. I had to get a colonoscopy and I had to get cleared for my colonoscopy before I was officially, ready to go. I got my colonoscopy done on July 19th, 2023. The last thing I had to get signed off on. I was on my way home from the hospital from my colonoscopy at noon on July 19th of 2023. At 1:17 p.m., David, who was my donor, got up off the couch, was walking down the hallway, and collapsed of a massive stroke. No warning, no. And I had survivors, and this is why I'm tearing up. I had survived, and I still have survivor's remorse for this because I feel so guilty. I feel so guilty that my miracle involved someone having to lose their life. But what's helped me with that is if the shoes were reversed and it was me that had to die for him, he would take my liver.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So he collapsed without warning. When she got to the hospital, they told her, your husband, went so long without oxygen, he's never going to come off this machine. The only thing that's keeping him alive is the fact that we've got him on this sheet. You can call all the family. You can do whatever you need to do, but we'll keep him alive as long as you need us to. He didn't know what to do. She was lost. It's her husband. She's lost. She don't know. What do I do? She said literally she opened up her wallet and looked down trying to find phone numbers to call people. And on his license, he had that he was an organ donor. She said, I didn't even know. She said, I had no clue. And she said she looked at the doctor and said, what's this? What do we do with this? And that literally changed my life. That moment, if they would have unplugged him and he would have passed away, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
Yeah.
Literally every ounce of everything that happened had to have happened the way it is for me to be here. And it's nothing short of a miracle. I'm literally the walking, living proof of a God's miracle. There's no other way to describe it. They told us to be prepared to be in the hospital for 6 to 8 weeks after my transplant. We got for 6 to 8 weeks. We had 2 suitcases full of clothes, prepared to live in hotel rooms as long as we had to be able to me to get past my recovery. I walked out of the hospital, walked on my own 2 feet out of the hospital 5 days after my transplant.
Wow.
And it's been nothing short of a miracle ever since.
That's
then.
got to be a record. Yeah, you should look
Before
up.
I walked out of the hospital, and this is why I live by the motto I live by. Day 3 of my transplant, when my surgeon came in and talked to me, I told him how eager I was to get my life back. Doctor, I'm ready to go. Let me walk down the hallway. Let me up out of this bed. Let me go walking. I feel great. I want to go. Let me do this. He said, listen, everything's went great. You're doing great, and that's great. But you need to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's telling me, he said, every step matters. Just make today better than yesterday. And before you know it, you're going to be your old self again. And I live by that motto every day. It's not just something I say, it's something I do. I make today better than yesterday. Tomorrow needs you. Don't ever forget that. And I live by that motto, and I stick by it, and it stuck with me. And here I am today, and I'm extremely grateful for everything I'm extremely grateful for everything I had to go through. If it had to be somebody, I'm glad it was me. And I know now 1000%. It didn't make sense at the time. It didn't make sense why I was having to deal with what I was doing. It didn't make sense why they weren't transplanting me. But I 1000% believe if I didn't end up in Cincinnati the way I did at that exact moment, at that exact time, I wouldn't be here today. So I'm extremely grateful for it.
Yeah. That's amazing. That is definitely an amazing story, because we didn't talk about much that on Mayhem Media. I wanted to save it for this, and you told me a little bit about what happened, so I kind of had an idea on how the story was going to go. No, I didn't. So yeah, that is just astonishing and amazing, and definitely a tale of God's grace and mercy for sure.
And after talking with the family and hearing how grateful they were that I was doing good and how awesome they feel knowing that he got to be a hero and that I'm alive and today because of him and their gratitude towards the whole situation, I couldn't be mad anymore. I couldn't.
Yeah,
I wanted to be mad so bad. I
yeah,
wanted to go and I wanted to tell Dr. Barber exactly what I thought and exactly how I felt. And I literally just the calming peace of God came over me. There's no other way to describe it. And literally the day before I was gonna go cuss this man out, I called and canceled the appointment. And I ain't
yeah,
looked back since. And I've completely forgiven him for everything I had to go through. I'm sure it wasn't personal. I'm sure it was strictly business. It is what it is. But if he wasn't, and for better lack of words, because I don't know how else to put it, if he wasn't greedy and he wasn't working for money, I wouldn't be here today. I got to experience what I got to experience. I'm able to get the word out now. Hopefully, by doing this and by saying my piece, I'm able to save somebody else's life so they don't have to experience what I had to experience to be here. And I appreciate you for giving me this opportunity and this window to be able to share my story and get that out there. And if one person is going through what I went through and they call the University of Cincinnati or they call the University of Philadelphia, I don't care where they are in the country, if they call another transplant center and they were able to get their life saved because of that, then I've done my job and I've done what God's asked me to do. So
absolutely. And another tale to this is me having this podcast and giving you the platform to actually tell the full story. As you said, you mentioned it, you've got to talk about it a little bit on other platforms, but never a real in-depth, tell the whole story like this. So, and I can assure you that without God, there would be no Boiling Point podcast.
it's hard to be open and raw and emotional sometimes, but sometimes you have to be.
Yeah, I wish I could go back and refilm the opening of this so I could tell people that they're getting ready to witness one of the most powerful episodes of the Boiling Point podcast. That's how I'm going to promote this episode. So I think this is going to be one of the best and strongest episodes that we have for many different reasons. And I appreciate that you're willing to come on and give your story because I'm sure it couldn't have been easy to just relive it and go through all of that. So.
No.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that you were able to do it and that you did it here and that you chose my very small show to do this, big, full, in-depth kind of interview about it. So I'm very grateful for that.
And I'd be grateful if it opened platforms for you as well, man. I really would.
That's one thing, technology podcasting has given a lot of people the ability to get more stories out, to talk to more people, and that's one thing that I try and do. My content, I try and make my content real content. It's not fake, it's real content. So that's one thing, the Boiling Point podcast, I always try and the bar for the Boiling Point podcasts content is much higher than my other brand. It's just entertainment. This is real life.
Yeah.
It's right here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you can't get any more real than this story right here. And I'm grateful for you and for Mrs. JMO for coming on and giving us this story because it's an amazing story. And make sure I'll reach out to Lifetime for you. All I ask is for 10% of whatever they're going to give you for your life story to turn it into a movie. I'm here to work for you, JMO. We're going to get you a Lifetime movie. So
Right.
definitely. I mean, in my opinion, it would qualify.
Man.
So, I mean, yeah, I'm really beside myself at your story. That's really, it's astonishing. Just everything from you not getting the transplant for years and having to go through what you went through to how you got it to everything. It's
completely changed who I am as a person. Like I'm humbled. Don't get me wrong. I'm humbled. I was humbled by the whole situation. I'm grateful, and I'm eager to live this life to the fullest. I wish I didn't have to practically die to get to where I feel today, but there's no looking back at this point. I'm going to live every day if it's my last. And if it turns out to be my last, I'll be grateful for every day I've gotten since I should have died. I died on July 22nd or July 23rd of 2023, and I was born again, and I'm going to live every moment like it's my last, and all the way up until I can't do it no more. So.
Well, I didn't fully cry during your story. I had to wipe my eyes once or twice, but I didn't fully cry. So I maintain that. No one's made me cry on an episode yet. That's my personal trophy. So I'm glad that I was able to make it through and not have to, because I'm sorry, but when one person's emotional and then another person is emotional, then it all just
It's awkward. Just two guys fine. It's all right. Come here, give me a hug. We'll be all right.
It just all falls apart. Yeah. Well, see, you got your wife next to you to give
That's
you a
right.
hug.
She's like,
I saw her. She had your back through that whole thing.
My back trying to keep me calm. So.
Oh, she had your back through the whole thing. There was no doubt about that. I saw it the whole way. Definitely no question about that. So that had to be nice too, to have somebody with you to go through all this. That had to make it even just a little bit easier, though. Maybe more difficult and complicated because it's your wife and you wanted to be able to take care of her and work and do all of that. But when you can't be, it's nice to have someone there that can be there for you.
It's one that I would not be alive today if it wasn't for her. She kept me alive 1,000%. You hear all the time that marriage is 50-50, but that's so bull crap. Marriage is not 50-50. Sometimes it takes somebody having to step up and be the stronger one. And there's no doubt in my mind she's stronger than I'll ever be. Like there was times where it was not even close. It was 99.1%. Like towards the last 6-7 months before my transplant, I had nothing left.
Yeah,
absolutely nothing. Like I couldn't even make it through the day without having to go lay down and go to sleep. Like literally she was having to do everything and all things at all times and be strong for me. Like she couldn't even take the time to mourn the fact that she was losing her husband because she had to be strong for me. Like I'm extremely grateful. And there's not a doubt in my mind who you choose a partner in life is important because without the support, I wouldn't be here. There's no doubt.
Yeah, we should definitely maybe we'll do another Boiling Point podcast episode and let Mrs. JMO give the.
Yeah, I'd like to see her get a little emotional here. Instead of me just being the wuss over here, maybe she can get a little emotional.
Sometimes emotional as you.
After being what she went through, I doubt a conversation with me would make her emotional.
Yeah, she's definitely a tough one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if she made it through that, then yeah, I doubt a conversational will do that. But yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. And of course, we're going to have you on other episodes. And now that I also know that you're a football fan, stay after I do the credits. Stay after the credits because I want to talk to you about doing some football content.
Okay, all right. Sounds good.
Mayhem Media is getting into this year. We're getting into the football game and football content. I've been wanting to do it for the last couple of years. I'm a huge football fan. You know what? Let's save this for after the episode. People are not interested in this on the podcast. They tuned in for your story. That's why people are tuning into this. And that's exactly how I'm going to sell this and promote this as your story. And I hope if you ever, use this, tell everybody, reference this episode. If you ever want to use the footage for anything else or anything, just reach out to me. Let me know. I'd be happy to do whatever, or, anything. So just let me know about that. Thank you for coming on, JMO and Mrs. JMO. Go check out Ohio Valley Wrestling, OVW on YouTube, right?
YouTube, Facebook.
And on Facebook. And Mrs. JMO, what is your page? Because I'm sorry, I don't have it memorized.
GoldenAgesPhotos.com or Golden Ages Photos LLC on Facebook.
Okay, go check out her as well, especially if you need some photographs and especially if you're a wrestling content or a wrestling promoter and you want some good pictures of your wrestlers, reach out to Mrs. JMO and have her photograph some of your people because she's good. I've seen her work. She's good. And she works for OVW. Come on. Your company is not OVW. So get somebody who's OVW. Thank you guys for coming on again. Marcus Frederiksen is going to play us out as he plays us in and out of every episode. Please check out the storefront. Sorry, I have to pay my bills too. You know how it is.
Absolutely. Give me a bag, man.
Make sure you check out our storefront at bonfire.com/store/the Boiling Point Podcast. We've just added a bunch of new products. We have bags now. We have duffel bags. We have windbreaker jackets. We have lounge pants. We have yard signs. We've just added a bunch of new products that we just got access to. So please go and pick something up. And if you picked up any of the new products, reach out to me after you get it. Let me know how it is. Let me know if you like it, because I haven't even had the chance to get my own new products yet. Until next time, make sure you look on Mayhem Media for JMO's next appearance. We're going to have him on for the multi-generational episode on Mayhem Media, and we'll try and see about having Mrs. JMO back on a Boiling Point podcast episode to talk about her side of this whole epic saga. Is that a good word for it? Of this epic saga that Jesse Moore has experienced in his life. And, I'm also personally glad that you had God to help you through it as well. I'm glad that you had a relationship with him before that you kept it through that, because that couldn't have been easy at all. And,
trust me, on the front side, I was blaming.
I can only imagine there were probably some moments there. Yeah, there would have to be. So yeah. But the fact that you came out the other end stronger, I think, is a testament to everything as well. So this has been a great episode, and thank you for tuning in. Please share it out. Leave us a comment for JMO or Mrs. JMO if you'd like, and we will definitely have them on again. And until next time, I am your host, JD, and that's the end.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.